Good day, and welcome to Transfer's Weekly Wraps. I am Viv Govender. This week we're going to cover the Trump tariffs, the latest move by the US Fed and what it means going forward. And then we look at a couple earnings from two big tech companies that are in our AI portfolio, that's Meta as well as Microsoft. And then I'm just going to talk about a kind of conclusion I've come to around some of these massive salaries being offered in the tech sector and what it means. So let's start off with looking at the US Fed. The US Fed kept interest rates unchanged. There were two dissensions, which is the most that there's been in about 3 decades. So what we are seeing here is a bit of a battle of walls between the US government, particularly Donald Trump, and the US Fed. Trump wants interest rates to be cut. The Fed is saying not yet time. What would make it justified to cut interest rates in the US? For instance, if we saw the economy weaken, which we have not seen yet, if we saw inflation come well below the target level, we have not seen that yet. That being said, there are signs that there are some difficulties occurring in the US economy because of some of the tariff, fears out there. We've seen consumer confidence numbers, etc., showing a bit of weakness. But it does, in the scope of, possible Fed, decisions, the range of what's available to them given the current scenario, it's quite fair for them not to be looking to cut interest rates right now. From Donald Trump's point of view, lower interest rates means the stock market goes up. It means people feel happier because they have more money to spend because they're not spending as much on interest. It also would help the US budget deficit because they would have to spend as much servicing that debt as otherwise. So yeah, from his point of view, lower interest rates are good. So the fact that we are seeing this massive discrepancy between the two parties is, I think, obviously from an incentives point of view, quite logical. But the actions that Trump is taking, the kind of statements he's put forward with regards to, for instance, replacing Jerome Powell, the quips he's made about Powell's incompetence, etc. Those things are unusual, and I do think the market is, to a certain extent, ignoring the potential risk that's on offer if Trump does decide to do something about Powell's, non-compliance with the Trump administration. Now, moving on to tariffs, we saw deals being announced between the US and Europe, which basically brings tariffs down to about 15%, and also involves a potential $600 billion investment by the European Union into the US. That $600 billion, by the way, is going to be from the private sector. How exactly the European Union, which is not exactly the CCP or a state-run economy, is going to force private companies to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in the US, I don't know exactly, but it's part of the deal. Let's just see what goes on. It must be noted that even though this deal was done between the EU and the Americans, a number of EU members, including some of the largest states out there, have said some negative things about this particular deal. So it remains to be seen whether the European Union actually has the power to do deals on behalf of the European Union, just because of the fact that its component members, like the underlying states, may not be willing to basically go along with some of these conditions. We've also seen the Trump administration announce a 25% tariff with India, and one of the reasons in Trump's post about the particular tariff was the fact that India isn't chosen the US's side in the Ukraine-Russia war, still maintaining friendly relations with the Russians. What they want is that the Indians, for the Indians to basically start buying more U.S. armaments and kind of eschew the Russian arms. Now, for those that don't know the history, India and the U.S. have a very fraught relationship, especially around the military. Why? Because India, it's most of the country it's fought the most with in the last several decades. Its number one enemy in many ways is actually not China, it's actually Pakistan. And the US has had an ally in that region for quite some time, and that ally has been Pakistan. The US has sent lots of money to Pakistan. Pakistan was essential with the war on terror in Afghanistan, for instance. I mean, the US basically needed somebody next to Pakistan to operate in Afghanistan, and they basically, Pakistan offered that. At the same time, there have been tensions. I mean, Osama bin Laden was not hiding in Afghanistan, he was hiding in Pakistan. But a particular area of conflict with them has been the fact that the US has been supplying arms to Pakistan. And if you think about Pakistan's number one enemy is India, those arms have been basically used to fight the Indians. Now, India is definitely, therefore reticent about, relying on the US for its armament, because, in that scenario, the US will determine who wins any kind of conflict. So that's one thing. Now, it must be noted that the US and India have a very close relationship. Pakistan, even though there's technically a historic relationship, that relationship has not been as strong in recent times as the US-India relationship has been. Trump has apparently quite a good relationship with Modi. You can go back to like personal stuff. J.D. Vance's wife is Indian. He's the head of the FBI is Indian, of Indian origin. You're talking like Tulsi Gabbard, not quite, but she's a strong relationship with India as well. There's a strong interconnection with the Indian diaspora in the US and so on, and it's quite possible that we will see this kind of like blow over going long term. But it's interesting to note the fact that even a good relationship with the Trump administration, which South Africa does not have, doesn't protect you entirely from the Trump tariffs. Now, moving on to South Africa. South Africa, basically, we are facing tariffs coming in the next couple of days as I speak to you. I do think that we probably can get some kind of amelioration done, especially if we promise some stuff. And there's talk about a 60 billion rand, promise to invest in the US from the private sector. Exactly, again, how the government in South Africa, which again is not a state-controlled economy, can go off and promise that private sector companies are going to invest so much money and what that money is going to be for, etc. It's very difficult to understand how exactly that's going to happen. But look, it worked for the EU. The EU managed to get a better deal because it promised 600 billion in terms of investment. Maybe our 60 billion rands, which is about $4 billion, or a little less than $4 billion, is going to help in our deal with the US. Who knows? Let's just see. But we're already seeing an impact on the currency. The rand has weakened, above 18 to the US dollar, just ahead of the implementation of tariffs. This is the first time it's done that in quite a few weeks. I do think that if these tariffs do go in the current, incarnation or the current levels, it will be quite negative for the US economy. For the South African economy, and negative especially for the rand. The US, quite frankly, like I said, compared to the amount we're talking about under $4 billion for the US from South Africa. The European Union is talking about $600 billion. Just get an idea of where we place in this world. Okay. Now, I do think again we will get some kind of amelioration. That's Trump's thing. Go extreme, pull back significantly, and you feel that something that you would have thought was terrible at the start, because the extreme has been put out there, feels better. That's what they did with the EU. They put an extreme out there and then causing the EU to accept something that, if you're just being straight, 15% tariff, they'd be quite a bit more negative about it. Now, moving on to some earnings we got from Microsoft and Meta. Both these results have been spectacular, and aftermarket, these companies are, Microsoft almost just under 10% up, and actually, in fact, above 10% up. Both of these companies are indicating that there is a business to be made in the cloud, in the AI sector. Microsoft, I think, is more directly AI, and this cloud business is doing quite well. There are questions about how the cloud business is accounting for, revenue and so on, because one of the bigger users of cloud for Microsoft is some of its own things, as well as things it invests in. For instance, we have Xbox, we have the Office. Operations in cloud that are obviously run through Microsoft's own cloud, but also things like OpenAI, which Microsoft made an investment in OpenAI. Some of that investment was in credits for Microsoft Cloud. So if, for instance, Microsoft invests in OpenAI, gives them credits for the cloud, then OpenAI takes those credits and uses Microsoft's cloud. Is that actually revenue or not? Some people say that's not. But there is enough evidence out there that Microsoft is doing really, really well from this AI, hype out there at the moment. And that's obviously positive, not just for Microsoft, but other AI companies as well. Meta is probably in many ways doing even better. Mark Zuckerberg released a little video where he talked about his view for ASI. I found it to be quite limiting. I mean, he's talking about things like, for instance, glasses and whatnot. And if you look at people that actually look at the ASI possibility out there, they are looking for far more radical changes in the way the world works. But I suppose it does feed into his open, sourcing kind of models that he's putting out there. He's saying, okay, if you want to have your own model, use our hardware. We're going to give you a freer system, as opposed to being constrained by, for instance, OpenAI, etc. Now, Meta benefits from AI in a number of ways. In actuality, its actual AI business that it's putting out there doesn't really make a huge impact in the world. I mean, Google releases token numbers. We know what kind of token numbers like OpenAI does, etc. We don't know what exactly the Meta token movement is. I mean, I'm sure it's not zero, because I mean, obviously people who have WhatsApp are using Meta's AI, etc., which I think kind of makes sense from the point of view that it's free, and the Meta's with Instagram, with Facebook, with WhatsApp, billions of daily users on the platforms. So it kind of makes sense if they can integrate an AI into people's lives more easily than other companies can. But from that particular pure point of view, AI is not really helping them directly. I mean, yes, they're making models that are these long models that are basically considered to be not quite as good as the best, but up there among the best, and they're open source, they're free. So people are looking at them positively, but in terms of actual revenue, not really making the money from that. What they are doing is they're using AI in other areas. One thing AI can do is basically get more information with less data. What I mean, they are able to basically glean a better idea of what your profile looks like from a small amount of information about you, or data about you. So when Apple, for instance, restricted Meta's access to some of their old data streams, they basically saw a big drop off in terms of the effectiveness of their ads, because they weren't quite as sure who the people were that were viewing these ads. But with the emergence of AI and the ability of AI to go out and basically really extrapolate from like small amounts of information and scale as well, that's important. Maybe a human being could figure out the same things, but they couldn't do it for every single Meta user, while as Meta's AI can. That allows Meta to basically have more targeted ads. Those means those ads are more valuable to advertisers, and they benefit from that. And we in fact saw the value or the revenue from ads actually went up. In addition to that, one of the fears around towards Meta has been the fact that we have seen towards sanctions on companies like Shein and Temu, etc., come into play, and they were big advertisers on Meta's platforms. That really hasn't affected them just yet. Now, one thing to be concerned about is the fact that one of the things Meta lives off is kind of screen time. So screen time is what makes its business grow. And people spend over an hour on average on Meta's platforms every day. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, those kind of things. Threads as well, There's only 24 hours in the day, and there's only a certain amount of time you can be awake and watching and spending your time on things. We are seeing that people that have ChatGPT are spending about half an hour a day on ChatGPT. Now, if ChatGPT's growth continues as it is, and other AI programs as well, with Claude and all the other things out there, continue as they are, we are likely to see a pressure coming in terms of amount of screen time available for Meta. And we could possibly see in the longer term, if these companies grow their user bases, even if they don't monetize them directly, we will likely see an impact come through, just because there's not enough hours in the day to do a couple hours in Meta, as well as another hour or so or half an hour or so on your chat program. That half an hour or an hour you're doing the chat program will eventually start to eat into the hours you're spending on Instagram and those kind of things as well. And I think that is a long-term threat for the company. Now, just one final thing before I go on, and again, this is more speculative. If you look at some of the offers being made about two AI researchers out there, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, where I just said, the fact that we are seeing these multi-$100 million offers being made to individual researchers, generational wealth kind of money, which I mean that you are never going to worry about money for the rest of your life, and your children and your grandchildren are not either. That is obviously changing the way, for instance, VCs are working in terms of the ability for you to make money as a employee, rivaling what you might be getting as the founder of a unicorn company, etc. But another way to look at it as well is the fact that some people are not taking these deals. That is the crazy thing here. There are people that are being offered, packages, and there's talk about multi-year packages as much as $1 billion, that are not taking these deals. Why? What do they know that we don't know? And one of the things I would have to say is that that's a very strong indicator that there's a lot of progress happening at the very edge of the state of the art stuff that is probably not the markets are aware of at the moment. And these researchers, which are operating these companies or working at this really cutting edge of the state of the art, technology, etc., are seeing progress that is making them believe that 100 million, 500 million, or $1 billion, pay package is not sufficient to basically leave a company that may be on the verge of creating an ASI. And that is my impression here. The fact that these people are not taking these deals, quickly and universally, means that there is a significant amount of belief among researchers that they are really, really close to getting to the next level of artificial intelligence. And I think that is quite interesting to think about. Okay, thanks for joining me. I look forward to speaking again next week. Cheers.